Hi, I'm Stephanie Elwood with the Southern University Ag Center. Two of the best ways to ensure a successful garden are to make sure you have fertile soil and that you have a water source. A little later we'll show you how to harvest free rainwater, but first we're going to show you how to generate very fertile garden soil out of waste. The natural soil in many backyards can be too sandy or contain too much sticky clay. That's why garden soil is available for purchase. But a cubic foot can cost from $4 to $5 in most places, and it will barely be enough dirt to fill a 5-gallon bucket. That's one of the reasons it's good to learn how to create your own fertilizer and free soil by composting. Composting can also be a great way to limit the amount of reusable materials that go into landfills, which are already bursting at the seams in many places. To get started, you must first decide how and where you're going to contain and store your compost ingredients. The price for compost bins can range from $40 to $50 and up to several $100s. But you can build your own compost bin using tightly knitted mesh, wire, or wooden boards, or simply create an open compost pile. Ideally, you want to compost in an isolated area in your backyard near the site where you're going to be gardening. Knowing what you can and cannot put in your compost bin is very important. There are two different types of materials that will be placed in your compost bin or pile. They are classified as green or fresh waste and brown or dried waste. Examples of green materials can include fresh cut grass, vegetable peels, pods, stalks, coffee grounds, eggshells, manure from animals such as horses, goats, cattle, table scraps such as the carrot tops that aren't going to be cooked, onion, orange, and banana peels. Old plants that are pulled out of the garden can also be green waste. The green materials are high in nitrogen. Be mindful about adding table scraps and fresh materials to the compost pile. These things can attract insects and rodents. Keep the pile moist but not soaking wet. Soggy compost piles can present strong odors which will be unpleasant to both you and your neighbors. To avoid a compost pile that is smelly and attracts insects and rodents, follow this simple rule of layering to keep the compost pile under control. The rule is, after placing any green or fresh compost onto the compost pile, it must immediately be covered with a carbon material to keep the smell of the compost to a minimum. Brown material or carbon materials include dried leaves, small twigs, non-color printed paper, and dry pine needles, among other things. During the fall and winter months, fallen leaves are great for composting. They provide great sources of carbon. Brown waste and green waste are essential in breaking down compost materials into soil. Oxygen enters the compost pile through aeration, turning your pile every time you happen to think about it. Rotating the debris in the pile causes the debris to break down faster. This leads to a shorter waiting period for your free soil, and it will allow for critical air flow through the pile to prevent a soggy, rotten pile. Store-bought compost bins have mechanisms in place to churn your compost material, creating airflow to various parts of your mixture. Avoid placing meat or dairy products and bones in your compost pile. These things can be composted, but only on a much larger scale with a more regulated compost system. The length of time necessary for waste materials to turn into soil varies depending on the season, materials in the pile, and how often it is turned. Things break down faster in the hotter temperatures. That said, you don't want your compost pile to get too hot. Temperatures above 160 can kill beneficial microbes. You can fix the problem of a hot compost pile by adding more carbon to the pile and turning the pile more often. You will know that your mixture has turned into fertile soil when it is a dark brown or black color, smells clean, and is crumbly to the touch. Having a water source near your garden is very important to the success of the garden. Rainwater is plentiful in southern Louisiana, and it can be harvested or collected and stored to utilize in the garden when necessary. You can purchase barrels and hoses for around $100 and up. Fixtures are in place to connect the water barrel to your gutters. You can even purchase hoses and spigots to make watering easier. The simplest and most cost-efficient thing you can do is simply get an empty clean barrel, trash can, or bucket and put it under the eaves of your roof to catch the rainwater. The more surface area you catch water off of, the more water you will collect. For example, If you simply place a bucket in the middle of your yard, you will not collect very much water at all when it rains. But if you place it at the edge of the roof of your house or allow the gutter to flow into your barrel from the roof, you will collect maximum amounts of rainwater in shorter time periods. You will need to cover the barrel with mesh wire or an old screen or something to keep bugs and mosquitoes out. When your garden is dry, water can be taken out of your rainwater bucket and sprinkled on your garden for some plants to enjoy some nice, clean rainwater. You can learn more about composting and collecting rainwater by visiting our website at suagcenter.com.
Funding for this project was provided by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, National Institute of Food and Agriculture.
This segment was produced through the partnership of the Southern University Ag Center, Louisiana Public Broadcasting, and the ExxonMobil YMCA.